Thinking you need the gaming and technologies, NFTs explained? Too much big money talk got you all hyperventilate? Pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and hear from John-Wesley Ingram as we discuss how we got gaming and technologies NFTs in the Bahamas, the 242, and how we're going to become great as people. Join our sponsors, Dom Dev Enterprise and Page Investments, and our friends at Something to Think About. Share. Let everybody know we are live. Ask your questions, send your comments online, and we will endeavor to answer them. We'll be right back.
Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles.
Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. And what we imagine, we can achieve. Let's change the narrative 242. So this evening we have one of the bright minds from the neighborhood on the show. We have the Honorable John-Wesley Ingram.
Thanks,
JWI, as I call him.
Thanks.
Welcome, Brother JWI. How are you today?
Good, man. How you doing, Agapi?
Great. Hi, Stephen, all the way there from Africa. Far away. Welcome to the show again. Well, tell us a little bit about you. We know that you went to school in Tampa, but what did you do and so forth?
So as you said, I graduated from Aquinas in 2012. From there, I took my talents to Tampa, Florida, St. Leo University. Did a bachelor's in computer science, information technology. Had a very active college life. I was in a lot of clubs. Director of the Florida Caribbean Students Association and also president of the Caribbean Students Association at St. Leo. After that, I went directly into working as a part of my OPT, which was pretty much our avenue to work post undergrad degree. I was very fortunate. I got a job pretty much directly after getting my degree, and worked for 3 years, and then I went back, did my master's at St. Leo again in cybersecurity. So I got a pretty extensive information security background, but all the while after undergrad, I have been working doing database maintenance. So that has been one of the skill sets that I've developed since graduation and through my professional time of working. So database work, information security, those I would say two of my strong points as far as skill sets.
But you get two other ones that is on the cutting edge. One in the Bahamas now is called backyard gardening. You're a master of that. I mean, you, your sister, and your mommy.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember if your dad does any, but
he's the main one.
Yeah, and then you doing the gaming, and so we're gonna talk about how the gaming and your profession cross in that space, and talk about gaming and technologies, NFTs. These NFT things. These are. In the Bahamas, we call them passwords when you say what it stands for. So, you tell us a little bit about NFTs. What is the abbreviation for? And you start with it first.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, NFT is right now a real hot topic, but they stand for non-fungible tokens, and pretty much what that means is they are one of one items. So one of the biggest comparisons that people use is a dollar bill is fungible. So I have a dollar bill, you have a dollar bill, we could exchange it, we still have the same value. Whereas the Mona Lisa, that is one of one. You could have knockoffs, you could have prints, but there's only one Mona Lisa that was painted by the original artist,
Right.
which makes it non-fungible. So I like to consider NFTs to be the second application and real world use case that we have seen for blockchain technology next to currency, notably being Bitcoin, Litecoin, currencies that cryptocurrencies that utilize the blockchain.
Yeah. So before we go too far down that road, then, so NFTs, you say as a token. So I always consider token as like a use, like when we go in on the bus or on the train in the States, you don't really hand the people money. You give them, you pay for a token, you give them the token, and you keep that, and then you put it in the machine when it's time to go on the bus or the train. I don't know if we're doing that in the jitneys anymore, but one time ago we used to do something similar to that with some paper things, but it wasn't really a token, not a coin token. So would this be considered similar in its principle? We're staying at the fundamental level here, and then a little bit more.
So I actually do find it pretty funny that we do refer to it as coins, tokens, because as you said, they're not very similar in principle. In cryptocurrency, NFTs, you hold your assets in a wallet, but that wallet is more so, I would say, like a keychain. So pretty much it holds the keys that your private keys to particular assets. That asset could be currency, it could be an NFT. But as far as the similarity to currency that we used to tokens, it does act a lot differently as far as the digital sense, because there is not a physical or even a digital representation of the token. It's all cryptographic hashes that store value of a particular item that is programmed to represent that commodity.
Right. So now you said that this is like the second or third application on blockchain. So
Right.
give our viewers just a high level snapshot of what blockchain is. We've had a couple of shows where people spoke of it, but some of them might not have known.
Yeah. So I think at its simplest, blockchain is a method of storing data, and I think the main thing about it is it's a decentralized way of doing it. So traditionally, myself, I work with a database, and my database is centrally housed, whether it be on a person's computer or in the cloud. It's centrally housed somewhere. Whereas blockchain is a distributed network of multiple nodes. I could set up a node, you could set up a node, and these all run this network, and pretty much you could store data amongst all of them, and that data is not easily editable or be able to be changed. So pretty much I think the beauty in it is really the transparency, but also the security of it. It utilizes cryptography along with I would say data data housing to create secure blocks, and pretty much you have a network that agrees, and this network is the nodes that set up individually all over the world, and they all have to agree and come to a consensus to add a block to the blockchain. And that block that's added has its own hash and a copy of the hash of the previous block, which pretty much keeps it connected to the block before it and also ensures that nothing has changed from the previous one to the new block.
Right. And then also because it's distributed, then it's not just one person having ultimate control. It's
Correct.
a whole network of persons who collaborate together in unison and so forth. So when we look at that, then there's a lot of misinformation and misconceptions out there. What are some of the biggest misinformation and misconceptions about blockchain and NFTs?
So I would say blockchain to start with, and not a misconception, but I would say just an infant phase problem is that blockchain is the method of blockchain right now of validating transactions is a very energy hungry method of doing it, and it is also, as I said, due to its infancy phases, that the network and the technology has scaled so much faster than I think it was anticipated, that we've run into a situation where you have hundreds and hundreds of nodes competing to mine and validate transactions, which have been just a complete cash gold rush to be a part of Bitcoin, be a part of blockchain. So not so much misconception, but as I said, it's a growing pain as far as the non efficiency as far as electricity consumption. NFTs, I would definitely say right now it is looked at as a big fad. It's looked at as Ponzi schemes, and I would definitely say for the current application we are very, very infant phases, and I think a lot of people look at it and see people buying pictures for thousands of dollars, and they just look at it as being ludicrous. And I myself would agree that is pretty ludicrous, but I definitely
for a picture.
Oh yeah, but I would definitely say it. You do have to take a step back and kind of look at what are we learning from being able to apply this technology to these assets currently. And I think this right now is just our baby steps of getting into the possibilities of what NFTs could do, what they could provide to asset management in the future, in real life and also in the digital world.
Right. But on that point you made, the people pay $5,000 or more to go watch a sports game the last 2 hours, and that's the end of it. And so everything is relative there from that perspective. So when we look at my analogy of the train and the token, then the blockchain could be considered like the train track network. All of the stations would be where the nodes are, where you have a computer and the like, and everything is stored. But one thing, it's not serial where the train has to move from place to place to place. The data on the blockchain moves fast to everything because it's all digital, and that makes it more efficient. Correct? Something like that?
No, for sure.
All right,
definitely cool. On the right track.
Okay, so is NFTs the game changer, the most recent application on blockchain? Is that what is expected to be the big card draw right now, or is there something else going to be coming on the table very soon also?
So it's funny you ask, and I definitely believe there's something else coming. They were on Capitol Hill a couple months back, pretty much dealing with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency legislation and talking about regulation. And one of the speakers she had pretty much given the analogy of 20 years ago when the internet had first launched, and we were able to use the internet to communicate, get information. We would have never thought that the internet was going to scale to where it is today. We would have never thought that we would have Internet of Things, smart devices, the cloud. None of those applications were even remotely thought of from the inception of the original application or the original platform. So, as I say, I think blockchain is like literally this 20 years out as far as what it could be. And I think we just scratching the surface as far as what applications are going to be born out of this and what use cases we'll be able to develop from the technology.
Yeah, but for somebody like me who was a pioneer in the pure digital arena and seeing where we have gone so far, I could imagine where blockchain and rest go. So when we look at this and we say that this is not, we used to say we're on cutting edge technology. This really is over the edge. We done over the cliff out there and way out in space doing these fancy things and so forward. And getting into this mode of digital transformation and the like. Now, your history, you mentioned expertise or your specialty focus was in cybersecurity. And you know that a lot of people always have this feeling that anything in the digital arena, they won't touch, feel, put under the pillow, under the rock oven, or wherever they want to hide the money from themselves so they don't spend it. How do you do that in a digital arena environment?
So, I would say the days of tangible money honestly coming to end. And that's why I don't really like to refer to cryptocurrency as digital money, because we have digital money right now. Like the average person, and I would speak from being in the States for almost 10 years. I don't carry cash. I have a credit card, and that is acceptable payment anywhere I go. So I definitely think we phasing out of that mindset of you need to hide your money under your mattress type of thing. But I had recently read a book, and it was just kind of talking about how pretty much once you put your money in the bank, you don't really own your money. Like the bank owns your money, and all you do is you have a ledger that displays what your balance is, and if you have enough money to execute a transaction or not. But that money is not sitting in a vault that you have $20,000. They use that money, they loan it out. So I think when it comes to this digital era, we definitely get into a point of real ownership, where if I own X amount in Bitcoin, depending on how I do it, because you can still own that Bitcoin and have it in a way where you are not the actual custodian of the Bitcoin, depending on where your Bitcoin is. But this is set up in a way that if you understand it correctly, you know what to do. You can own the keys to your cryptocurrency, and I think in the true sense of ownership, that's a lot more tangible than our current system of what people would quote unquote consider trustworthy, or the norm of monetary security.
Yeah. So really and truly, there is no real difference, because when you put your money in the bank, and we've seen a number of people complain that, well, right now in the Bahamas, we're paying them to keep our money in the bank more so than they're paying us. The interest is in the wrong direction. But I guess it's a matter of, we have no control when the money is in the bank. Some people go back and they find that the money isn't there, or there's some discrepancy, and then you have this big row between you and the bank and so forth. And so this myth that in the digital arena that your money just can go poof and disappear isn't no more of a risk than what it is now. Then basically is what I'm hearing you to say.
That's what I would honestly say. I would say the beauty in cryptocurrency, the beauty in blockchain is the decentralization of breaking away from centralized control. we see right now, and rightfully so, they got a issue with Russia right now, and the way the current financial system set up, like the world was able to impose on them sanctions that cut them off financially from the world. Like, and as I say, right, they have their own thing going on, but who's to say they can't do that to the everyday citizen and say, yo, you don't meet the qualifications to have a bank account no more. So
Right.
either you take your money or we keep it, whatever they do to reconcile. But I definitely think people take for granted how centralized a lot of the things in our everyday life are currently.
Yeah. So when art, the NFTs first came about, they used it to buy and sell art. And people like Dom, my son, your friend, would have been they objected to it because it changed the business model. I shouldn't say it changed, but it provided an alternative to the business model which they felt was not broken, and they liked the system that they had. So how do we embrace that now to get more? Because it seems to be that there's more access to being able to purchase art using NFTs versus the traditional way.
Yeah, and I like the question, and I would definitely say, I think the two coexist very well without disrupting either side. So the most renowned and the most expensive NFT pieces that have sold, the particular artist that made those, he is a digital artist. And I think that's where the big rift is because traditional artists, they don't really view digital artists in the same light. Like, if you don't actually paint on a canvas, it's a little, they sticklers about that. But he was recently on Jimmy Fallon, and he was saying that he was making digital art for years, making no money because pretty much it was very hard for him to legitimize and sell his work because once he posts that on Instagram, Twitter,
Yeah.
people, they screenshot it, they do whatever, and he was having a hard time doing it. And NFT, as it came around and gave him an avenue to pretty much, as I say, asset managers work. He could put a signature on it and say, yo, this is the original piece, and people now could buy that and validate that, yo, I'm not buying a knockoff. I could literally look at the history of this and see that people is the artist that made this on this date, and then he sold it to this person for this amount, and I'm now about to buy it for this amount, and that's going to be transparent to the world. Anyone who wants to look at this item could now validate that, yo, this is the original piece. So I definitely think the two can coexist. I do think that the need for traditional art will always stay as it is. I think painters, you have renowned painters who will always be able to put out work and make thousands of dollars from. But I do think now this has opened up another avenue for digital artists and traditional artists that want to dabble in making digital art, to be able to make their work, to be able to get paid, and not deal with kind of the mishaps and the piracy of the internet and people stealing their work.
Yeah. So you mentioned something there which was key and to the whole process of identity, and that was signature. So in the NFT, then there's a digital signature affixed per person, or is how does that work?
So it's per asset. So
Per asset.
and that's why I wouldn't say just the art, because it is per asset. So pretty much the asset has the signature, and then you have a ledger of ownership. So the ownership right now will be represented in wallet addresses. So you'll see that this X wallet made this piece, and then Z wallet bought that, and you could keep track of every transaction that has happened with this asset. But yeah, the asset itself has a signature, and that signature is what validates this is the real item. This is the 101. This is the Mona Lisa, because it has this particular signature that, the knockoff Mona Lisa will never have that same signature.
Right. I know you can still hear me? Because
Yeah, I can see you. I can hear you, but I see I on the green screen right now.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do then is we will take a break here, but before we take that break, then I'm back.
There you go.
Oh my.
It's a fast break.
Okay. Kristen Thompson is saying great points. Thank you for joining us, and do ask the questions, because we expect this to be a discussion that we want to help you out to get a better appreciation of what NFTs are and how we're going to be using it, or how we can use it, so forth. Mom Ingram, happy day. I didn't say earlier, but happy to you. This is JWI's mom on here with us, and we enjoyed her and all of the good things that you've done for us as we were growing up. I was still young, don't mind the bald head. Cool. So the NFTs embedded the signature, and so that means then this is a safe and sustainable tool. Let me use the word tool.
Yeah,
is that correct?
I would say technology, because
okay.
I would definitely classify it as a new form of technology, and you could stop me if I go off topic, but I would definitely say we have, in the very short time of NFTs being around, seen NFTs evolve themselves, because as you mentioned, NFTs in their inception, which was years ago, but I would say since they've been popular, had really came out as a very one-to-one vehicle for art. So it was just random art. Artists would sell their digital art and they could validate that, this is my original piece. But I think from 2020 to date, 2021 to date, we've seen NFTs evolve more to memberships, is forms of memberships. So, when you see people spending thousands of dollars on what everyone knows to be just these apes, that's been the very I guess marquee symbol of NFTs today. It's not necessarily buying the picture of an ape. Yeah, you get the picture that people use to represent themselves on social media and stuff, but they also buy access to a very exclusive club, because all the other people who have those apes also spent millions of dollars on the apes. So now, kind of like a fraternity, fraternities, we take access a little bit different, but these NFTs have definitely became vehicles of creating communities and building projects, and almost kind of like crowd funds as well, where somebody have a project and I make 5,000 NFTs, and every person who owns this NFT is now going to be a part of this project, and it's only going to be 5,000. So if it's a good project, the demand to be a part of this community, a part of this project, will drive up tremendously. And one example that I could just speak on that I think would resonate with a lot of people is Gary V. He has a very well NFT collection right now, and his NFT, one of his perks to the NFT, where you got 4 years of access to the rest of it. You got access to his conference for the next 4 years. So currently, right now, for one of those NFTs is about $50,000, and that's because people see the value in being able to go to this conference for the next 4 years for free. And as long as somebody find enough value in whatever this NFT represents, they will pay the price, and the price will either the price will always be dictated on what people are willing to spend. And that's the same concept with cryptocurrency. The demand will always dictate what the price is. The price will never be manipulated to be something that ain't generated organically.
Awesome. Well, You've been listening and watching something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. We're here with John-Wesley Ingram. He's an IT guru, very much interested in the NFTs and the digital space, security expert. And when we come back, learn from the soil, so we're going to dabble into how we're going to apply all of this in the Bahamas and how we can raise the lid so that all of we boys on the blocks and so forth could get into something and have some access to extra funds, whether it's chump change or it's big money. It's up to us, whichever one we want to do individually and so forth. So, Madam Producer, you want to take us through?
Sammy's Chicken. There's nothing like it.
Behind every scoop, lick, and savor is a smile and memory being made or reminisce. Whether you're at work, out with family on a Sunday, or have friends visiting, flavor will meet expectations in our 32-ounce container for only $10 if you're having a special event as well. Exotic flavors ranging from soursop to Guinness is definitely worthwhile. Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. We're here this evening having a conversation with John-Wesley Ingram on the NFCs being explained so that we could see what we can do with them in the 242. And, I have to say that I'm so proud of John-Wesley because he's one of the boys of the blocks growing up. I was the old man compared to them, but all of them, every last one of them have come to become productive citizens doing their own niche things wherever they are in the world. And we're just proud of them. And I'm sure Mom is going to be elated, ecstatic. All of those words together. Mix them up. Vehement. So JWI, developers are finding more ways to and create more real-world solutions in the digital arena. People are becoming more comfortable with it. Now they're changing the words to metaverse, and soon we can be in the Matrix and wherever else we want to be for these applications.
We in it right now.
yeah, that's true. But, video games.
Yeah.
You all grew up on video games.
Yeah.
I used to get fussed out for playing video games. But, I had Michael Armagon, I think he's president of the Bahamas Esports Federation, on the show before. And he told us the situation where from playing games, this young guy, I think he was about 15 or 17, he won a tournament, and that was for some $2 million plus. And that's just the traditional way of the game. So now if you're putting this into making money digitally, that should make it even more efficient and so forth, because you could have your whole team anywhere in the world. I could be your agent. I could be in the Bahamas, you in Tampa or in Florida somewhere, or somebody else could be, the commissioner, whatever, anywhere. When all this is happening in the sports world. And you need marketers, lawyers, and all of that for sports. So talk to us about this now. How are we going to leverage this?
So I think this is a good segue with cryptocurrency, because I do think that people tend not to like change, and I definitely would say cryptocurrency, gaming, these two things in today's society that people would definitely argue that don't really have a place. There's things in place that work just fine. And as you said, I think when we grew up, gaming was more of a pastime and a way of wasting time, and never really thought of as being an occupation or anything that would be taken professionally. So, I think right now gaming has completely moved into the professional light, where, as you mentioned, we got tournaments where you could play competitively, earn money, but I think what's even more intriguing and innovative with it is that you literally have schools giving full scholarships to esports gamers. And St. Leo, where I went to school, which it ain't a huge school, but it also ain't a very small school. St. Leo last year they launched their esports team. They changed one of the buildings in the school to esports, pretty much like a arena. And yeah, they brought on a team, the whole team on full scholarships, and in the future they looking to pretty much bring on new students on esports scholarships. So right now the gaming industry is $1 billion industry. They between professional and just content creation, you got people literally just making a living on YouTube covering game content.
Right.
So I think this is definitely now a very viable opportunity for people to, or career path for people to pursue. And I think definitely it's one of those things that we got to kind of change our way of thinking, and kind of look to the future of what the possibilities of for our kids would be. I think traditionally everybody would like their kid to go to the NBA or the NFL and play actual physical sport, and a lot of people find it kind of ludicrus to think that my kid would be a professional gamer, or a kid could be a professional gamer. But as you mentioned, like I think the average professional gamer salary is about 80 to 90,000, somewhere around there, and that's like average, just you on a professional team,
Right.
but not endorsements, actually being like one of the better players. And that's right now, in also its infant phases. So I definitely think that's a sector that got tremendous space to grow right now.
Yeah, it's when Mike was on. Michael was he was telling us that it was projected to be something like $4 billion by, I think, the end of next year or something like that.
Yeah.
And what he was saying was that every function in the NFL today or the NBA today, what makes that work, whether it's the scouts in the farm system, whatever you could think of, the concession stand people, all of those things happens in esports.
Oh yeah.
And so it's just a duplicate of everything that is happening. And so then that means now there's opportunities for people who would have gone and become an accountant to now manage your books for you, for example. I mean, that might be the wrong thing, but So how do you as a IT professional gain from that, and then how do we get that into our system here in order to get more children, I shouldn't say children, but young persons involved, and we could change the narrative so that we could see that as a stream, because I have this view of $100 billion economy, and I push it and people look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm looking at two things that we talking about tonight could be 40 billion by itself.
Nah, seriously.
Yeah, no.
But
Yeah.
you know, I'm very happy to hear that we have an esports federation. Like, I didn't know that, so that's definitely a good step in the right direction. I think as far as nurturing the idea and the career path, one of the biggest things that got me involved was building my own PC. My dad used to build PCs back in the day, but gaming PCs, they have a very personal touch that you could customize them. You make them look the way you want. You could build them up with all the specs you want. That it really does give you like a very personal connection with your computer one, and I guess the things you do on it. But I would also say, I think there's a narrative of computer gamers, IT people, where people kind of just see this like person with glasses behind a computer that doesn't go out, not sociable. And I would definitely say today, and I work in IT, I work with developers from JavaScript to full stack, like they know it all, and it's not like that anymore. Like it's not where you find I guess the traditional picture of what you would see a computer enthusiast to look like. So I think camps, I think workshops, those definitely gonna be good avenues, good entry points for kids to start getting their feet wet. And I was watching a couple videos in preparation for this, and like these professional gamers, like they literally do a certain amount of game time, and then they do a certain amount of like physical. They'll go out and train and work out, and they'll have social time, and it's all about balance. So I definitely think that one, having the esports federation, like that's definitely a great step in the right direction as far as being able to bring awareness. But as I say, I think definitely if you get some workshops, if I don't know if that's government and what their funding looking like, but to have somewhere where you have 50 computers that souped up, good internet, and people could come in during different times and you have like experienced people who play games who could coach, because they do coach. Like there's coaches to these teams that strategize different ways to play these games, and could kind of mentor people as they explore this sector. I think that would definitely help to push the culture. But as for home, I think the Bahamas for sure could double, just like how we got Battle for Atlantis right now. We could do something as far as esports, an esports event. I was watching a video, and these dudes using the Staples Center for esports events. Like they selling out. The dude said they sold out the Staples Center in 11 minutes for an esports event. So I definitely think Bahama, Atlantis, those would be great marketing pitches to some kind of esport event in the Bahamas. Everybody love to go to the Bahamas to do something. So
So yeah. So I mean, I might have been the man between the diamond, on the diamond, playing baseball, but there's always the man on the other side of the diamond. And so he might be buying jerseys or the shirts and the bats and the like. So how do they benefit from the industry?
Well, as you say, I mean, marketing right now, I'd say not at its all-time easiest, but through social media, the internet, all of these individual gamers, and then also these gaming groups have really built their platforms up, and their followings to a point where, as you say, I mean, they start up their own websites, they have their own. So one of the biggest things with gaming is streaming. So you could be a professional gamer, but you also could stream, and streaming has become a very lucrative avenue for professionals and just casual gamers and the like. That you set up, I play game, and X amount of people could watch me, and for some odd reason, I don't know why, but people will literally pay you to watch you play video games. So between streaming and being able to market their image and likeness, these gamers, as I say, they're not your traditional image of computer enthusiasts anymore. Like these personalities, they have large followings. They have definitely found ways to market their image and likeness outside of their competitive sport, similar to our traditional professional sports, where we got dudes who make a significant more amount on their off the court activities or off the field activities than they do in their actual contracts.
Right. So you have Dave was telling me how he and a couple of friends would be playing with Aton and the rest, and some people would want to pay to watch to even see y'all amateur playing against a real professional basketball player.
Yeah.
And so forth. And so, I mean, the imagination is something that is stopping what avenue we could build on a system, the digital platform, and so forth. But can they buy and sell the gear in terms of anything like that? Because you talk about art, you could put
so, I think this is where we now meet in the middle with the two technologies, where we have gaming as an emerging industry and then the technology of NFTs. So, traditionally right now, games have allowed you to make in-game purchases, and you will buy either cosmetic items or items that help performance in games. But once you buy that item, you own it, you could use it, and that's pretty much the end of it. And I think with the NFT aspect, adding NFTs into games gonna add a aspect of ownership, kind of speaking on to getting in transition into like Web 3.0, where rather than us just interacting with the game, we'll be able to own pieces of the game. So rather than me just buying a cosmetic item from a particular game and I just have access to use it, I'll now be able to buy this cosmetic item and I'll have access to use it, but also trade or sell it if I want to, because now I own it. I have the ownership in the form of the NFT. And, I think that'll definitely reward both sides. With the NFTs, the original creator, which in this instance would be the game, they'll always get their royalties. They'll always get something from the sales. But me as the consumer, I'll also now be able to benefit from spending money in this game, spending my time playing this game, and now I'll be able to either one, keep a certain amount of items and not have to rely. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's really like when we were doing the car race, right? And I used to have my little steering wheel because you are using the finger thing, which I can't use. And you also be laughing at me. The cars that we were been able to win and upgrade to and stuff, the game owned all of that. And so when the game was finished, it might have been a carry on from game to game to a certain point, but you couldn't do anything else with that. So, but now you're saying with NFTs, you will own the car itself, and then you could just trade it with somebody else at your price range and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. And I mean, I would say, same thing as I said with the Gary V NFTs, the market will dictate what the price of the item is. So, but, the main thing is you will be able to do something with it. You'll be able to trade it. You'll be able to sell it. As I said, the gaming model has changed a lot from when we was playing games, and that, you know, I would say really the revolutionary game, Fortnite, they haven't brought out another game in 3 years. It's been the same game, but they put new content into the game for us to buy. So like, you know, I would say me personally, and I'm a very casual gamer. I work full time, so I don't play game as much as, you know, some kids have the ability to play. I've probably bought that game 10 times over the last 3 years, and they've only put out one game. So, you know, I think as far as transferable from game to game, you know, I think that's a logistic that NFTs haven't found a way to I would say, coexist with, because there's different engines to different games, different programming languages. It would be a mess to try and move like a particular asset from one game to the next. But I think in the current model of gaming, you know, I think games are gonna you know, I think definitely it's gonna come. And I think in the current model of gaming, you know, NFTs would definitely serve its purpose in that you have one game that may last 5 years, and over that 5 years they just push updates to the game. They update it cosmetically. Some different streets may get changed. You may have different buildings here and there, and in that sense, yeah, NFTs would be great. You know, you could trade and continue playing that game year in and year out, with, you know, making it still seem like it's new.
Yeah, but I guess the main thing what I want to be conveyed is that it could be an actual source of revenue, a real source of revenue, a sustainable source of revenue, and not just some game that you pick up because you're tired and you come home and then play and shoot the crap for a couple of minutes, and then people could actually use it as a tool to make money, real money too.
And as you said, they got it. It's the play to earn model. So like, you know, traditionally we used to pay to play, which is we pay, we get the game, we get to play, and now you're getting these play to earn, whereas you play and you could earn rewards that you could do something with, or you earn NFTs, or you buy NFTs that you could do something with. So it definitely evolving for sure.
Right. So and then, I mean, that's in the gaming arena, and that's pretty much pure digital. But what about crossing over and reaching back into the analog world, the real world, where we could touch, feel, and think? And there's this thing called Blue Terra. Coming out. I see on their webpage they're talking about LAN and putting affixing NFTs to LAN, and you purchase in so much LAN, and then you could do whatever you want and trade it. And this LAN is in the Bahamas, by the way. You familiar with that? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Blue Terra is a project that we had came across, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and very, very ambitious project that is a group of foreigners. They got I wouldn't say they have like 2 Bahamians that they have disclosed that are on their team, but their whole objective is they're gonna release 5,000 NFTs, and each NFT is gonna be tethered to a piece of land in real life. It's gonna be a pretty small plot of land. I mean, it ain't nothing huge, but definitely groundbreaking for the technology as far as, you know, being able to now relate this digital form of ownership into a real life asset. And, you know, the Bahamas has seemed to prove to be one of the more crypto and blockchain friendly countries. You know, they definitely been welcoming to the technology and to the companies that are involved in the technology, that it is legally possible to do this. So, you know, as I said, there's a lot of logistics, because you now crossing over from the digital to the physical, and you know, there's all kind of, you got building restrictions, and I mean, even before building restrictions, just, you know, for somebody to be able to buy a piece of land, there's a lot of stuff that you traditionally would need to check off. But, as I said, I think that's just definitely one of those examples of where the technology could go. As I said, they in the process of launching. They haven't launched completely yet, but that's just a hypothetical and real life example that being pursued that if it does get executed correctly, if they're able to pull it off, that'll be revolutionary. If you could buy a piece of property as an NFT and trade it a lot more easily than you would buy and sell traditional property. So that's a project I definitely looking forward to, as I say, not only because it's in the Bahamas, but just because it is very groundbreaking for the space. No one has done that before, and to be able to branch out and do something like that, that'll open up the possibilities for NFTs tremendously.
Right. And so now when we look at that, that's just two examples of what could happen. And like I said before, it's really up to our imagination as to what we can apply this technology to. It's not like you build a whole building and you find the building is wrong and you knock it down. It's in a digital environment, so I don't want to say it's monopoly money, but it's easier to change, formulate and restructure and reset and rebuild to move forward. So the small man, I'm always concerned about the small man, right? How is he going to benefit? I credit to the Junkaners. The Junkaners are some of the most creative people, I think, in the Bahamas. They get in the shack, people talk about they can't perform the work on the job, the traditional stuff. And then when they get in the shack, you see brilliant things coming out of the same people that they say it's good for nothing, worthless, whatever, people like to call people. How do they then leverage something like this in order to expand themselves and their network?
Well, I would say for starters, all of my friends know I'm an advocate. If you don't believe in cryptocurrency, believe in me. Like, I just tell all of my boys, buy $100 of Bitcoin if it's the very minimal that you do, just because you don't want to be 20 years down the road and you could have invested in Apple at its inception and you chose to be skeptical. We not to say $100 is a little bit of money, but we spend that doing more unmeaning things that we could find something with value or take it a risk in an investment. So I would definitely say for people in the Bahamas, I think a lot of people look at cryptocurrency as I ain't in the States, I can't get involved. It's not true. You could definitely get involved. It's very easy. Couple clicks and you could figure out how to buy crypto from the Bahamas. And I would also say, just as you mentioned with the Junkanoo, there's so much opportunity right now, especially right now, because right now it's hot. It's a catchy term, NFT. Everybody kind of gravitating to it, and it definitely is a bubble. And I do believe that it'll calm down eventually. But right now, I definitely see avenues for people to get their art out there, whether it be Junkanoo, whether it be selling pictures of the Bahamas or experiences. If you got a boat and you want to make an NFT of 500 and pretty much 500 people get access to go on a excursion. I think for us there's a lot of opportunities to market and kind of just distribute our products globally with this. And I would definitely echo it, especially with the global and international sense of blockchain and cryptocurrency, is that right now with our current system, it is hard for us in the Bahamas to interact with the States financially. Like I know just sending money to anybody home is a hassle for me to do. So I definitely think this is one of those avenues that give people a way to get out there, get broader in the Bahamas, market, sell, invest, we can't invest in the U.S. stock market. Like I've been here for 10 years and I still can't invest in the U.S. stock market. So cryptocurrency has been my investment avenue because it's accessible to me. And I definitely think we right now, if you a chance person, like this definitely the hardest time to take a chance. And as I tell people, I don't ever endorse I don't suggest that people go ahead and spend thousands of dollars investing in cryptocurrency, right? But I tell people all the time, Dev, Chad, Bruni, they'll tell you, like I tell everybody, just buy $100. If that's all you do, I'll be happy. Take my word for it. Like infrastructure change and infrastructure has changed, and as you had mentioned, being in tech, even just moving from analog to digital, voice over IP to Ethernet, like
all that mesh, right? Yeah, all that.
Technology gonna change, and we definitely right there at the next cusp of infrastructure changing.
Sure, and it will continue to change, because in '86 when I came home, it was just in the infancy of making exchanges, we used to call them in the telecoms arena, digital, and then we moved right up the ladder, and so all the networks are digital throughout the Bahamas.
Right.
But now we're getting into the applications, which is what all these things are, and applications by customers or the users having control of the applications, not necessarily the telecoms companies.
Yep.
And so forth. But Dave had something on the screen a couple of minutes ago, Madam Producer. He was asking, can we create our own NFTs projects as Bahamians?
Yeah. And, as I say, that's the beauty in this, is that it's a platform, and it's kind of like the internet. Like, you could do whatever you want with the blockchain. Like you could create a whole new application. As I said, like cryptocurrency was the inception application to blockchain. And, NFTs, digital ownership, is a second application to it. You could make something else. Like who knows what's going to be the next application to it. But, that's really the beauty in this decentralized network, that anybody could tap into it. I would definitely segue on that. Like, speaking about what we could talk to the kids about with gaming, programming languages, programming languages and programming in itself is like a big thing. But the languages themselves, right now, there are specific languages to blockchain that high demand right now. Solidity, Rust, those people making $300,000 right now, that if they have those skill set to be able to develop in blockchain, in smart contract technology. So, anybody could pick this up. Anybody anywhere in the world could pick this up and, make an NFT, make another cryptocurrency, or make another application. And I think that's really the beauty of it, is that, there's no centralized control that, you have to go through a KYC, or you got to go through some kind of verification to gain access to this network. Like you could literally open up your computer, type in a website, pull up some code, and right then you got your platform to make whatever you want. It's endless right now, I would honestly say.
Yeah. So, and when I left the mainstream of the telecoms arena, we would have been the Bahamas, that we would have been likely to be the most digitally connected per square mile in this World Zone 1. And that's including the United States and Canada in terms of connecting all over. So that gives us access all the way from Grand Key in the north all the way down the Naguados in the south. People could get involved in this activity and finding ways to leverage and be creative in this space, so that we could either do it for farming or whatever it is. Just let your mind flow, and then start dabbling and put it in the space that we need to be in. Because I want to see this $100 billion economy before I leave this earth. right? And I think it can
I want to
happen
see it
quicker
too.
than I think, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It there. We just need to make it happen, right? Peel off the layers so that we could get to bring it out. So, Senor, time does surely fly.
Oh yeah.
But before we go, we want you to say a few things. But one of the things I want you to ask before I ask you to what you want to say to the public would be is that what do we need to happen to allow NFTs to fill the pockets of the people? Whether it's education, the government need to do something, private developers need to do something in the Bahamas, the telecoms operators. What needs to happen?
Education.
Just
I
pure
just say
education?
just pure education. I was just watching a Gary Vee interview, and he was talking about the first time he heard about NFTs, and he said he pretty much went to YouTube, and he said he watched about 20 videos. And I mean, everybody don't have time to do that, but if you put, and I could
For
I
how
could,
much you say? $300,000 a year. You can watch 20 videos?
all right, no, exactly, and
No.
as you say, I would say Dev, Chad, they all could attest to this. I think people look at it as a much taller task than it really is. And, I've even got my dad to a point where my dad is set up and he actively invests in crypto. Like, I think it's just that language barrier that people look at as intimidation. Cryptocurrency, blockchain, I don't really understand. I'm gonna stay away from that. But I find it surprisingly easy once people actually get the motor going, how much they end up consuming. And as I was preparing for this, my girlfriend was my wife was
I
sitting
was
there
going to
with
say,
me.
I would stop you for a second. Are you trying to, what? I got to make
But
sure you could wake up in the morning.
yeah, thanks, Faye. But um, she had started looking into it, and I came home from work today, and she down the rabbit hole. She asking me like, "Yo, how can I get this, and how can I do this?" And as I say, I definitely think education and just having, I would have to say, the slightest amount of interest to just consume, video one, and you off and running. But I mean, the government could help do seminars and workshops. As I say, I definitely think our government on a good track as far as embracing the technology. So I think the future bright for the Bahamas for sure in that respect.
Yeah. So I've given the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture an open invitation to come on the show whenever he can slow down from his busy schedule right now. But when we look at, you say just education, so that's something that we could do. But there's going to be places where persons out there going to need to have access to computers and the like. You talk about building computers, because when we were having a challenge even with streaming, and we were buffering and this and that, I had to get me an upgraded laptop. I would prefer to build a streaming PC, but I didn't have time for it, right? I needed to get one quickly. So maybe that'll come in time. For the children in the inner city where we have the web houses and the like, where people are going for the internet, would it be wise for the ministry or the like to set up hut stations, cafes, whatever we want to call them, so that the children could get into this space at an early age?
I'd say 100%. I think right now, as I say, I think it's definitely a mindset where phones, computers, TV, us as, and I guess I have to say us as parents, because I'm about to be one myself, but like, we don't necessarily want, people just don't like to have their kids sitting in front of the screen. And, I feel like we got to use the tools that we have in our day and age. Like, there's certain tools that we have today that y'all didn't have. And, we got to take advantage of those. So, there's much more value in putting your kid in front of the computer than sending your kid to the library. I mean, you need to have now some kind of, I would say,
control
around it. But the resources in front of the computer compared to the library, they're endless. So, I definitely think things of that sort, like if we could get a cafe, just like a web shop that, you got 50 computers and kids can come in and out, if they on summer break or whatever. And as you said, like say somebody with supervision, and in today's day, you could lock down computers just by the network. You don't actually even need somebody to come there and supervise. You could make it where they could only do certain stuff on the computer. But I definitely think, right now, creativity it could be endless right now. Like, I think we getting into a point where people getting really to tap into, what ifs and, how far I could push this limit, and, whether it be gaming, whether it be blockchain programming, whatever, I think being able to give kids a reliable and safe spot to go and explore their curiosities in a controlled environment, I think would do numbers for, the kids and the future of the country as far as coming up and, what we able to do, what Bahamians able to produce.
Yeah. And Dev says the education is key, not schools. And I agree with him. And education to me is academics, it's the experiences and the exposure. All of the three of those together makes education to me. So that's great. So JWI, it's been awesome having you here. It's good to see you again. I don't get to see you that much no more.
Been a long time for it.
Yeah, but you doing exceptional things over there, making your parents proud, the Bahamas proud. We look forward to you becoming even greater inspiration to you and your family, and wish you all the best with that. But before we go, we want you to, if there's anything you want to share with the general public out there that you would like, other than what I have asked you.
Yeah, no, I definitely would like to say thanks for having me. I definitely been waiting on my time to come on the show, so glad we got to knock that out. But I would definitely say to anybody who got a chance to watch this, any kids watching this, work hard. Like, I as Uncle Happy say, it was not too long ago where, we was running around in our neighborhood. I used to be by Uncle Happy. I'd be by my house with his son, my friends, and, we was just kids. And, 20 years later, 15 years later, we all adults working in our fields. And, I think you definitely got to call, give yourself credit where credit's due. And I think we all doing well. And I don't think it's anything short of hard work, determination, and, going off to school. That's one of the best things I could do that probably happened to all of us, just because of the exposure, being able to go out and grow and be adults and be on our own. So, I would just say, take the challenges of life. Life can definitely give everyone lemons, and you got to figure out what to do with them. So, as you all go through life, try your best, work hard. We got a chip on our shoulders always coming from where we at. We from a small country, so we got a lot to prove. And, I definitely love to see us as Bahamians excel in all facets of the world, whether it be athletically, education, publicly, whatever it is. I think we definitely have a good, rich sense of work ethic from where we come from. So, as I say, just work hard.
Awesome stuff, man. Awesome stuff. JWI, man, all the way from across the water, dropping some good nuggets here for us this evening. Yeah, and hopefully they've been of value to you, to cause you to be able to raise your lid and become more productive in your citizenry and helping people around the world. So JWI, thank you kindly, and thank you everybody out there in social media. Madam Producer, we ask you to pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like and follow, and send this information all over so that your friends will get it.
We welcome your sponsorship and your messages. Be safe. Enjoy. And you can watch more videos as you wish. Thank you, Madam Producer.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative 242